I write because I am, I have to just keep writing, that's about it. But of course, I have lots of characters, male characters, in the I person and female. It's just, my background is basically, through drama. So I'm fundamentally, I think, number one, I'm an actress, and second, when I don't have a stage, I write. But I'm not a feminist. That means, I don't, I kind of like being a woman too. I've had disadvantages, but can't change certain things. So I like showing women in books mostly because I know mostly about women, and I'm not a full-time writer. I have another profession as well, and I deal with a lot of women's issues in the sense, psychological things and all that type of stuff. So I portray women more through an actress getting on the stage in a woman's role. And of course, in lots of them, for example, in Theravada Man, there's Iskole Hamile. I was going through a personal crisis during that time, and I put everything I went through into this character. Of course, at the end of the day, my story was, to a certain extent there, but and I had moved out of it. But I started writing. I have never studied, literature or English language except in school. Never really gone for any creative writing courses or anything like that. I started writing because I became a mother, and motherhood bored me. So I belong to this category of, perhaps a certain privileged thing. I was able to, I didn't have a room as such. I was able to stay at home and write instead of looking after kids. So it came to a point in my life where I was actually tremendously bored being a mother. It was like in a barkarak, nothing was changing, just kept on and on. I couldn't change my destiny. I could only change attitude towards my destiny. So I decided, let me write. And I told myself I shall write just this one book, and by the time it's done, it took me about 8 years to finish that. The kids are big. But then it became kind of an addiction, and that's the danger of certain things, You get used to it, you get used to something. And then you kind of like being a writer as well. People know, people recognize, so they talk about your book and they go, shit, you've got to produce another book kind of thing, So this is my background, why I started writing, not as a feminist, not as a woman, just because I am what I am. Okay?
I have to proudly confess that I am a feminist. If feminism means respect for women's rights as being human rights, then yes, definitely I am proudly a feminist. About writing, I think we all subscribe to multiple identities. So sometimes I write as just a human being, sometimes I write as a lover, as a daughter, as an aunt, as a Sri Lankan, and definitely there are times that I write as a woman. So I do have in my work very particularly feminist pieces of poetry that I write. So I think that while it is not a great classification to look at women as a special category, it might be also necessary because women have been oppressed through the ages and their writing has not been taken seriously. So looking at it as a special function is giving more attention to it. In that sense, I think it's a valid category. And as I said before, I think we assume many identities, and writing as a woman is one thing I definitely do.
I'm Roseanne. When I spoke to this over an email, I wanted to make it clear. I'm actually humbled by this opportunity. When Elma Javardhana asked me to be in the panel, I thought I would be the least qualified to be here. Especially given that I haven't read many novels authored by females in Sri Lanka. But Elma Javardhana mentioned that I was invited to the panel for a different reason. I want to represent a different population in this country. I work in the north and south and also in the east in post-conflict areas, and I want to talk a little bit about everyday writing by very normal people like you and me. And we might not have a vision to publish a book, to become an author, but writing is a mode or a method, a massively transformative method of relieving grief. So we use that in our work. My profession is I'm a psychologist, so that has also given me the advantage to work with people like that. So what I have seen, what does creativity do? What is that inner experience it gives so that we can heal? I'm more interested in knowing that because I think it's a very timely question to ask ourselves after the war that we've all fought for many years. So what I have experienced in the North, East and the South, regardless of your gender, people would want to write, but the content might be different. The length of a poem might be different. The nature of expression might be different. If they are invited to participate in a workshop, if males do come, they come there to participate, so they do also do write. So I also believe that, we all know this, women are hardwired differently as a nurturer to look after kids, to bear children, to also look after and nurture, to build relationships. With that, we are also being gifted as females with a very, and some of you may agree with me, and this emotionality tends to, for some of us, very strongly fluctuate during the month. And you also, because we've done interviews, and my second book basically is a piece of technical writing, psychological writing. In our interviews, we also found out women in workplaces mainly having this concern. So it's something that's hardwired, something that's genetic. But my question is, are we going to look at this as a disadvantage, something that we should discriminate against, or as a gift? And I think in writing, women have a distinct advantage to use this emotionality. And we know, we have very famous examples throughout the world that people who have confessed that they write their best piece of poetry when. Okay, so there are also biological changes like hormonal changes that women compared to men go through during their lifetime. So I think it gives female a distinct advantage. But at the same time, we have to also focus on what are we writing about. If it's a detective novel, if it is a piece of, if it's romance, I mean, recently I read an article, women are being stereotyped to write romance. But are they only writing these? Can we break the glass ceiling? So as Tissa mentioned, it's easy to put ourselves into boxes and see ourselves as this, black or white. But the truth is, for me, the real writing is at the very grassroots levels. It's where people have battled trauma, people have battled wars and death and depression. And for me, those pieces of writing is immensely precious and sensitive. So my first book, Colors of the Sun, it talks about depression. It's inspired by a client. Having battled depression myself in my early 20s, I thought this is a great opportunity to write what depression is all about. It's a taboo. We don't want to tell anyone that we have depression or we are under, we take drugs. We don't tell that in an interview. But the truth is, people do go through depression. We do go through depression at some point in our lives. So I want you to pick that. That's my novel. My second piece of writing, which was published last year, is more psychological writing. That is a collection of articles that I have published in Sunday Times about workplace issues. So, thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm very happy to come today to speak about the role of women in literature. And so far I've heard very interesting analyses and viewpoints about this subject. I came from Kandy today, and I was very happy to know that women writers are making an impact. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be a woman writer to focus on women and to focus on the male gender. So of course, for me of course, I write more or less as a writer who doesn't think of herself as being a woman. Because many of my characters are male characters too. Male characters too, who are marginalized in a society. So actually, I studied in the era in campus, in Peradina campus, when the JVP revolution was taking place in the country. So I'm very happy to see some of my former batchmates also in the audience who have come. And actually we were dealing with a life and death situation. I interacted with women activists, women militants, JVP supporters, and actually death was something real to all of us. You could be kidnapped, you could be abducted, your body could be found on the road in the campus. So as a writer, I began to focus and document and chronicle the events which were taking place. So as a result, I decided to focus on issues such as the marginalization of women, the terror campaign, the suffering of other people, not only suffering of human beings, but suffering of animals and street dogs and animals in captivity and all these different things. So I was very interested in all of these things. And as a writer, I was also aware of the fact that there was a great deal of suffering around us as a middle class writer,